Hey everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com. One of the most common questions I'm asked is, hey Kevin, what are the best openings in chess that I should study? This typically comes from newer players getting into the game, possibly watching a few of the videos and realizing there's too many different openings to learn all of them, so they kind of want to narrow it down and figure out what they should work on first. It also will come from chess players that maybe they've been playing for a while, but they really only know a couple openings, and they want to figure out maybe some other ones that are popular or that maybe may fit their specific playing style a little bit better. So I thought it'd be cool to go over the top 10 chess openings that I think every chess player should know. They all have different facets to them. Some are more for aggressive players, some are more from passive players that like to counterattack later in the game. So it has something for everyone. So without further ado, the top 10 chess openings. The first opening we're going to look at is the Slav Defense, one of the more popular ways to defend against the Queen's Gambit. So pawn to d4, pawn to d5. Queen's Gambit is pawn here to c4, and then the Slav Defense is pawn here to c6. Very, very sound defense. One of the more common ways that you'll see grandmasters defend against the Queen's Gambit if they're not playing an Indian defense style play, which we have a Indian defense later on in this top 10 list. But very, very strong defense from black, and since the Queen's Gambit is one of the more popular openings in all of chess, having a strong way to combat that is always very good. The next opening we're going to be looking at is from white, and it's pawn to d4, pawn to d5, bishop f4, knight f6, and then knight to f3. This is the London system. Doesn't have to be in this specific order, but it's all about getting these pieces and pawns to these specific squares. Typically, the dark square bishop for white is one of the least common utilized minor pieces in the game. And so having an opening, you always want to have more than one d4 opening in your repertoire besides the Queen's Gambit. That's very, very common. But bishop here to f4 kind of changes things up, and definitely a very, very solid opening to have for white in your opening repertoire. The next opening we're going to be looking at in our top 10 list is the Caro-Kann. Previously in our first defense, we looked at how to attack the queen pawn opening. In this one, we're going to be looking at the king pawn opening, e4. It's going to be the same series of moves. So it's pawn to c6. It usually continues with pawn to d4, and then black can push forward with pawn to d5. So as you can tell, same pawn structure as before as the Slav defense, but this is more attacking that first move of pawn here to e4. So Caro-Kann definitely needs to make sure that you're familiar with this in your chess openings. The next opening in our top 10 list is the fried liver attack, one of my favorite attacks. Because I'm making the list, I get to put some pretty aggressive openings in here, and since I'm a pretty aggressive player, the fried liver attack is obviously going to make my list. If you're not too familiar, pawn to e4, pawn e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4, and then after knight to f6, white's going to bring his knight up here to g5, attacking with his bishop and his knight here on g5 to f7. And then if his opponent decides to go ahead and try to stop that with pawn here to d5, we're going to play pawn capturing after the knight captures. Then this knight's going to sacrifice here on f7. So if you like to sacrifice, this is definitely going to be one of your go-to openings because it's just really fun. Who doesn't want their opponent to bring out their king, and then they bring their queen involved, and they just chase their opponent's pieces all over the board? So definitely one of my top 10 openings in chess. The next opening in our top 10 list is the French defense, probably one of the more annoying defenses I think to play against, but pawn to e4 and then pawn here to e6. Getting ready if white plays pawn to d4 to push forward with pawn to d5. Very solid defense from black. So I definitely recommend if you play against e4 a lot that you study this because it gives black a lot of opportunities to counter on the queen side. Very easy as these pawns are pointed towards the queen side to push forward with pawn to c5 to get your dark square bishop involved into the game, to even get your queen involved into the game after you play your pawn up here to c5. So a lot of different ways. The French defense, although I don't like playing against it, is a very, very solid defense against pawn to e4. The next opening for whites we're going to be looking at is the Ruy Lopez. It's the first opening I learned in chess. It may be the first opening that you learned in chess, but if you don't know much about it, you should definitely study it because you'll probably see it. It's that common, probably one of the most common openings in all of chess. Pawn to e4, pawn e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then bishop to b5. A lot of different ways that it can go from here. You could have the Morphy defense. White can either take if he wants to with the exchange variation. He can always bring his bishop back here to a4, then castle. So a lot of different ways this can go, but definitely the Ruy Lopez needs to be on your list of top 10 chess openings that you should know. The next opening we're going to be looking at on our top 10 list is the Nimzo-Indian Defense. Great way to attack the Queen's Gambit. So pawn here to d4, knight f6, pawn to c4. This is the Queen's Gambit. And then we have pawn to e6, knight c3, and bishop here to b4. Black's already putting a lot of pressure on white. He's threatening a double pawn here on the c-file. He also hasn't really committed anything with his pawn structure, so it's pretty flexible for black. The Indian defenses have grown in popularity for both sides of the board. The King's Indian Defense, the Queen's Indian Defense, the Nimzo-Indian Defense is a very, very strong opening you definitely should have in your top 10 list of chess openings to know. The next opening on our top 10 list is my favorite opening, so if you watch me in my videos, you probably are familiar with this, but it is the King's Gambit. So pawn to e4, pawn to e5, and then knight to f4. And this is really geared towards players that find themselves loving the aggressive game, giving up material so that they can have more of an aggressive style, that they can have more pieces involved into the action. So if your opponent takes knight to f3, you can play bishop here to c4, you can castle, have your rook here on f1 to attack this semi-open file right here. So very, very aggressive. If you guys actually want more videos on, let's say, the top 10 aggressive openings for whites or aggressive openings for black, let me know. I can make another video. But this is definitely one of the ways that you want to get your feet wet and understand if you actually like an aggressive opening, because you could play the King's Gambit and say, man, this is just not for me. Once I get down to material, like I just don't know what to do because I play pretty defensive, this would definitely not be your opening. But if you like to get pieces involved into the action very, very quickly and attack your opponent, the King's Gambit is definitely one of the openings that you have to have in your top 10 list. The next opening we're going to be looking at is probably the most popular opening for black against pawn to e4, and that is the Sicilian Defense. By far the most popular defense for grandmasters. It's not only the most popular, but it actually scores the best as far as black's winning percentage. So you'll usually see this a lot. There's a lot of ways, a lot of different variations of the Sicilian Defense. You've got the Najdorf, you've got the Dragon, you've got your classical, you've even got the accelerated dragon, all these different things. I've made videos on all these, but more than anything, you should definitely be familiar with the Sicilian Defense. If you're playing white, you should be pretty familiar with how to attack the Sicilian Defense. There's different gambits that you have, but this is definitely going to be one of the most common openings in chess that everyone should definitely know and have it in their top 10 chess openings that they know in chess. And last but not least, our number one chess opening is the Queen's Gambit. So pawn here to d4, pawn d5, pawn here to c4. You can watch the video on the Queen's Gambit. It's not a true gambit. White can actually hold on to the material if he wants to, but this is the most common opening that you'll see now in chess. It wasn't always this way back in the day. There was more of an aggressive style, and you usually see pawn to e4 more than anything. But in the queen pawn game, this Queen's Gambit is very, very popular. So knowing how to play it as whites, because you may like this type of opening, and as far as black's concerned, finding different openings that you like to defend against this is very, very popular, because you're going to see this more than pretty much any opening out there. So that is my top 10 list of the chess openings that you should definitely learn if you're getting into chess, you've been playing chess for a while and curious, if you want to start playing more, what openings you should know. These are the top 10. If you guys want more lists, again, of different ways of the top 10 hypermodern or aggressive or passive or just things for the top 10 ways to attack the Queen's Gambit or the King's Gambit, let me know. I can definitely make more videos. But these 10, everyone should know and be pretty familiar with. So hopefully you guys learned something. Definitely make sure you check out all the videos for these 10 openings, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.